What started as mostly peaceful protests, NYPD saying when night fell, the destruction began.
As the US nears the contentious 2024 elections, the failing trust in the three branches of government, combined with external global tensions and conflict, threats from domestic extremist groups, the rising acceptance of violence as a means of settling political disagreements, hostile nation actors, and international terror groups that exploit societal instability create fertile conditions for widespread violence. Exacerbating these factors are risks from AI deepfake, rapid mass communications, the citizen journalist, prominent influencers amplifying grievances, and inflammatory media reporting. This convergence of exacerbators and accelerants for political discord offers the potential for serious security risks and significant business interruption. In a recent academic study conducted with over 70 seasoned security professionals, 91% believe physical violence will occur, 93% believe violence will be premeditated, 59% believe violence will include the use of firearms, and 81% believe violence will occur across multiple cities. The study also highlighted organisation preparedness concerns, with 39% of survey participants stating that their organisations are ill-prepared to handle politically motivated violence, 30% feel that current resiliency strategies are insufficiently developed, and 23% believe that currently provided staff education is inadequate. Over the course of the video, we'll be joined by the Head of Integrated Crisis Management for Cognizant and the Deputy Chief Operations Officer at Task Force for Global Health as external expert speakers. Our external experts will provide unique insights into some of the dangers posed by the election and what you may do to mitigate your risks. We will also hear from the Managing Director for the Sigma7 Resilience and Security Practice and his Head of Resiliency Consulting, who will also contribute their resilience, business continuity, and crisis management experience and observations during this complex period of risk. The scope of risk facing organisations is broad and complex, ranging from physical threats to people and assets, operational and business disruptions, direct costs and the loss of profit, data and cyber threats, and reputational harm. By understanding the threats and associated risks, organisations can be better positioned to prepare for and prevent, respond to and manage, and transition and recover from a crisis.
The risks coming up to the elections are fairly clear. There's the potential for public disorder on the streets in the US. So there's just the civil disturbance that could disrupt supply chain, workforce getting into work, that side of things. It could be vandalism of your property, your assets. It could spread across the country and actually bring the US almost to a standstill. There are some commentators that are predicting there'll be really widespread political violence in the build-up and possibly after the results of this election. So it could have huge impact on the US economy and through that on anybody with business in the US. And amongst those, there's also reputational risk. If the organisation or its employees are associated with comments made by political figures or commentators. Employees could be posting stuff on social media that could directly impact the reputation of their employer. So a great deal of communication needs to be done with employees in that respect. There's financial risk, market volatility in the build-up to and results of the election can impact share price, it can impact investor confidence, so that can have a big impact on some of the clients. There's geopolitical risk. A change of government could change geopolitical relations across the world, and that could impact their operations directly in many different ways. There's the cybersecurity risk as both activist groups and other state governments may start to influence the outcome of the elections, and they may target companies that are close to or associated with the either incoming or outgoing governments. And then looking further forward after the result of the election, there's the possibility of significant policy change because the US is getting a new president, whichever side wins, and that could mean a new direction. It could mean totally different funding, totally different regulation for different sectors. Yeah, it's a very wide-ranging set of concerns, from just controlling your supply chain during disruption through to complete funding disarray after a result.
Understanding how risks can impact an organisation based on the nature of their sector or industry, their geographic proximity to risk, their profile and brand, any perceived or actual associations with a political party, critical vulnerabilities, supply chain and dependencies, and their tolerance for risk will help leaders more effectively develop a focused, effective, appropriately resourced, scalable and flexible resilience strategy.
I think it's always good to start on a footing of what's the worst case, and then work your way backwards from there. What are we doing about those particular risks and as they pertain to your organization, right? So are our associates safe? That's the primary concern. How do we keep them safe? What risks do we see with civil disorder? And how do we keep our associates safe? That's always the most critical, right? They're your most important asset. And at the end of the day, everything else is recoverable, but the loss of life is not. So concentrating on what those risks are to our associates, right? If we do have an outbreak of civil disorder near one of our facilities, what do we need to do? Do we have plans in place for that? Do we have shelter in place if it's immediate and you're not able to get people out? Do you have some lead time? Is there a planned protest? There's an expectation of violence. Then can you have people leave the office? And if you do that, how do you secure that particular site, right? And then how critical is that site? Is that site a data center? Is that site a delivery center? What am I going to do if I can't get to an office? What if the roads are too dangerous? Yeah, fine, the office is fine, but I can't get people there. It's too dangerous to do it, right? You don't want to put people at higher risk. You know, do we let our people know, what do I do if I see a large group, right? Or, hey, there's a protest scheduled. What should I do about that, right? Giving them some preemptive, and there's tons of resources out there. What to do, what's safe, what's not safe, what is the best choice to make at the time, right? Good information to get out to the associates to make sure we're keeping them safe, right? And then once that's considered keeping the associates safe, how are we protecting our delivery, right? How can we still continue to deliver to our customers? Supply chains, again, very critical to many industries. Looking back at the pharmaceutical industry, very critical. They can be easily interrupted by civil unrest, right? Especially on a large scale. If I can't get product from point A to point B, I can't sell it. So what redundancies and what alternative strategies are there, and how do you mitigate that? And does extra levels of protection need to be applied? So those are all decisions that need to be made, right? Again, through crisis management, we have crisis management teams. And when things pop up like that, an emergent situation, we would convene. What are we going to do? Make those decisions. 1, keep our associates safe. 2, how do we continue delivery from there, right? What plans do we have in place? Do we need to modify them due to the particular situation itself, right? So looking at all those things, I think it is very critical.
Resilience strategies need to be structured to ensure that standards and practices are codified to capture the knowledge and experience of internal and external experts. Consistently appropriately applied, predictive rather than reactive, standards aligned, and appropriately resourced. Resilience also needs to be concurrently nimble and flexible to enable leaders to react to the dynamic and evolving risks based on both risk context and leadership experience. Combined, a structured while flexible resiliency strategy will avoid or reduce threats while also reducing the level of harm experienced during and following a crisis. A failure to plan is likely to lead to an organisational failure in a crisis.
So when we think about preparation, the first point is to make sure that organisations have access to accurate, timely information upon which to make decisions. And those decisions are based around, are the plausible scenarios that could impact on our business being realised? And if so, what decisions do we have to make? Information is key to making accurate and timely decisions that are right for the business. Secondly, preparation is about making sure that the organisation is ready to manage an incident. So we think about that in terms of ensuring that crisis management plans are developed, that, for example, in a manufacturing facility, critical vendors are identified, that business continuity plans against these specific risks are developed, and that management teams are trained to be able to deal with an incident and to prevent it becoming a crisis for the organisation. So standards are fantastic, and there is an entire suite of ISO standards, for example, that people can refer to. There are sector-specific standards that people can refer to. And in the US as well, there are homeland security standards, amongst others, that can be used as reference documents. All of those are great, but they're not going to make you resilient. What makes you resilient is the process that you work through within the organisation. And what we find is a sensible start point for that process and building a program is to be very, very clear on where the gaps exist within your program based on the context of your particular operation and organisation.
Training and exercising operationalises standards and practices, tests the effectiveness, or critically the ineffectiveness, of a resiliency strategy and those leaders implementing it, and builds confidence and familiarity for how predictive risks can be effectively tackled. The time taken to train and exercise executives, site management teams, specialists, crisis and incident management teams, and staff is seldom wasted. It creates individual and team robustness and effectiveness in the face of complex, high impact, and fast burn crises.
So it's imperative to develop leadership's knowledge, expertise, and overall experience around incident and crisis management. And we don't always put a lot of emphasis there. We may put more emphasis on preparing staff, but really investing in leadership and developing that skill set is really important. And so testing and training, doing these tabletop exercises helps leaders understand what's needed to do to mitigate and respond to these potential risks. And so you're not scrambling to figure out what is it that we need to do if there's a riot that has occurred and has impacted our building. Who are the key stakeholders that need to be engaged? Because that's a part of the crisis management plan. And so you've thought out what are the potential risks that could occur. And so, by having these tabletop exercises by training leadership, then know how you're going to respond and who the key stakeholders are that need to be engaged if something does occur.
I would like to thank our speakers for their invaluable contributions to this important topic. So what can you take away from this with regards to your own risk exposures and needs? Firstly, organisational risk leaders have access to a wealth of information on how political violence can quickly engulf society and overwhelm law enforcement and security forces. In addition, the multiple domestic friction points surrounding the upcoming 2024 elections, compounded by international crises and looming tensions, all present obvious warning signs to businesses. Organisations also have ample time ahead of the elections to evaluate the threat, determine the risks, assess the potential for business disruption, and to develop and resource appropriate resilience strategies. And finally, in order to best protect organisational interests, risk leaders can, ahead of a crisis, work closely with their business and financial counterparts to establish the known or anticipated cost of business should operational or production disruption, property and asset damage, critical supplier and vendor disruption, or employee injuries and deaths occur. Given the significant risks facing organisations, Sigma7 is offering your team an abundance of resources to help guide you through the election season. This includes guidance on building scalable resiliency strategies, free online leadership and staff training materials, leadership checklists on civil disorder, crisis and incident response, monthly threat summary reports, and insightful written content. This also includes an academic article developed in partnership with external experts, which has been published through the Journal of Business Continuity and Emergency Management, with a further article being released by the ACES magazine in October. These are just some of the useful information resources we are providing that you can leverage. Finally, we are hosting a live panel session with experts across industries on September the 26th, titled Addressing the Risk Landscape to Build Awareness and Resilience. This will cover the topics addressed in this video in greater detail, offer insightful discussion between industry experts, and give you the opportunity to ask the panelists questions. Our objective is to provide you with the best practice advice for navigating the risks posed to your organisation. To register your interest, please click on the link in the description of this video.